He grew up in a revivalistic, very conservative religious tradition. I think that becomes important because he owned a lot of that, but he also moved away from it. I mean, like he knew this. There's got to be more than this. There's got to be more than getting sinners wet or being frightened into saying a magic phrase.
Yes, I don't remember the first time I met Dallas. I think we must have been in classes together.
He's a student at a very unlikely place, Tennessee Temple. Tennessee Temple is a college at the time where, if some people know about Bob Jones University, well, people at Bob Jones would say Tennessee Temple is where the conservative Christians go.
Well, I suppose TV had just come out, and our school was debating about whether a Christian should have TV or not. So most of them didn't while the debate was going on.
His first year there, he can't afford to go back home to Missouri, so he's sitting in a Sunday school class for little kids, sitting on little chairs, and he spends a day reading the Gospel of John over and over, and something happens. It's like he steps through the wardrobe in Narnia. I mean, he steps into the Bible at an experiential level.
We were in ministry there together. The students needed to be involved in some kind of ministry on the weekends, and we would often go to jail services or to the poor neighborhoods and take flannel graph and teach there, and then doing street meetings, and I played a portable pump organ.
He has a very dramatic experience in prayer where someone prays for him and he's kind of out. He's at a conservative Baptist school having an unlikely charismatic type experience.
But that experience opened him to other things. I believe that I was probably one of the ones who was the leader in seeking more, just being open to the power of the Holy Spirit, and so all of that was building a foundation which allowed for a lot of expansion and a lot of correction and development later on.
She said, after that time, I never doubted that God was close at hand.
Dallas did not become a philosopher because he had doubts about the gospel, because according to his own story, there just wasn't a time when he had doubts about the reality of God. I asked him that question, and he told me that he's just never had any real doubts about it.
Now, Jane tells a story that they're living in Georgia. He's finished a couple of bachelor's degrees, and he tells her that he's going to go to the University of Wisconsin to study philosophy. And she says, why?
What would you do? Would you teach? And he said, no, I don't think I would teach. And so in my naivete and brashness, I said, well, what would you do? Just sit around and think?
We're going to move all the way to Wisconsin just so you can think.
And he said, yes.
Dallas used to say that if you're in the university, you can get in the church. But if you're in the church, you can't get in the university.
If you go the way of the church, you'll get the church. If you go the way of the university or the academy, you'll get both. And so see, Dallas was, he was studying philosophy at the University of Wisconsin, not because he wanted to be a philosopher at first. In fact, he was pastoring part-time the whole time he was in school.
He would later tell everybody he realized he was a danger to the people in his congregations with what he was preaching.
And so he fell in love with philosophy because he saw that it was a great aid to Christianity, but he also saw that it was a field that taught you to think more critically and carefully, and it would increase your ability to gain knowledge if you practiced it well.
he felt like he was getting more understanding of the person and of the soul from philosophy than he would get in a seminary. So he pursued eventually a PhD in philosophy to understand the person better, the soul better.
He also knew that if he did become a university professor, he would have plenty of opportunities to teach and to preach in churches, and that his ministry in the church would be present alongside his work in the university. So he got both and by becoming a university professor rather than by becoming a pastor. Dallas Willard combined a life of the mind where he was committed to rigorous, careful thought and reason. He was a man who valued reason. He combined that alongside of a tender heart that was rooted in a deep love for Jesus and life in the kingdom.
I think you realize that it's all real, that the kingdom is here. He didn't write about that until later, but I think there was something experiential that you can know this realm, you can step into it, you can experience it.
Dallas saw no conflict between head and heart. He did exceptionally technical philosophical work that was high level because he thought it mattered and he valued it. But he also wrote Spirit of the Disciplines, for example.
I remember one night, and this struck me. It was about 11, 12 o'clock, and I heard him talking in the lounge. And I went down halfway down the passage, and I realized he was praying. So I obviously retreated and went back to the bedroom. And that struck me, that kind of a person with obvious academic brilliance, and yet a kind of simplicity of faith, a confidence in the reality of God and the presence of God, enough to have a conversation in the lounge. So that touched me very deeply.
And so I believe that if we're going to follow after Dallas's example, we Christians have got to recapture the value, first of all, of the life of the mind in the church. We have to become studiers and more rigorous in our thinking. And we need to combine that with a tender, warm heart, rather than seeing them as opposites that are pitted against one another.
And in the end, it just comes down to simple respect and love, paying attention to people, listening without thinking about what you're going to say when they get done. I tell you, that's a wonderful exercise, is to listen to people. And there's so many people in this world who just think no one ever listens to them. And they're probably largely right. One of the greatest services we can do is to listen. If someone comes to us to receive prayer, listen first. Let them talk. Hear their story. That's great. You can do that. We can all do that. Those of us like myself who sort of are paid to keep talking, we have to take special steps. Shut up and listen. See, that's a way of respecting and loving people. That's paying attention. And really, the first act of love is attention. You pay attention to people. That's one of the deepest ways of receiving. And then when we respond, maybe not try to straighten them out. maybe learn how to say things that will ease them into something better without them necessarily knowing it. I think Jesus did a lot of that. And it is especially important to listen to children. You know, there's this awful saying that children are to be seen and not heard. You ever hear that? That's one of the meanest things I ever heard in my life. Jesus didn't feel that way.